Welcome to One Interview, One World. This is Lainey Kay, and this is a show about interviewing people from all walks of life because everyone has a story to share and we can all learn from each other. I hope you enjoy listening. Today, I am with Diana Cregan, who created the Back to Work roadmap for mothers. She has a background working in business management, corporate training, and development. She moved many times across Australia and lived in Kansas and in Texas. She wanted to do a career change and reinvent herself, so Diana saw a career coach who helped her join all the dots of her background. It led her back to her professional development. She was doing executive coaching and life coaching, and then increasingly career coaching for women who were at the precise point she had been. She was seeing it more and more difficult and felt compelled to run a program specifically for them. Given Diana's background in recruitment, she could see all the things that they were trying to do to get back into the workforce and knew they would be only depleting their diminished confidence and self-esteem. Following all the traditional methods was never going to work for them, and her experience as a recruiter knew it to be true. Hence, she created the Back to Work roadmap for mothers. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, not at all. I'm very happy to be here, Lainey.
Oh, very good. So what time is it there in Australia?
It's 7 a.m.
Okay, so actually I love interviewing people from other countries and getting a different perspective because I like to think that, you grew up in a different country, you have a different cultural perspective and view on things. And then now that you've been you lived in America for a little bit, that helps too for you to know what's going on over here.
So absolutely, yeah.
Give me a background about yourself and a little bit about your maybe growing up, like what you were like and what kind of experiences you felt helped you become who you are today.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's lovely. Thank you for welcoming me. I grew up in Perth, Western Australia, which is on the west coast of Australia, and I was very loved. I always felt very, very loved by my parents. I actually had a younger brother who died very shortly after he was born, so I was effectively an only child really my whole life. And I always felt very loved, very secure, and that went a long way to shaping the sort of person that I would become unwittingly. I'm a very safe person. I don't do anything that's high adrenaline. I avoid anything that might look like it's going to risk my life and well-being. I just learned from very young that my life was too precious, and I could see that my parents would do everything they could to protect me and make sure that I would stay safe. And without realising it, I took that on. So even now, amongst my family, I am the one who never goes on a roller coaster. Like, I have zero interest in any of those sorts of things, and I'm sure that comes from knowing that my life was really precious and not to waste it by doing anything dangerous. I had a really fabulous childhood. I went to a great school. I loved school. I was not particularly brilliant at anything. I was good, but not brilliant. Just worked very hard. Did drama and sports, and you name it, I was into it. And then when I finished school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I had done French for 5 years. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll go and live in France and be an au pair and just have, it's very common in Australia to have what we call a gap year, where we take that year off and travel. We're so far away that we kind of think, right, we're going to take a whole year off and make it worth it. So it's very common. So I took a year off, and unfortunately the French family, that whole connection fell through and I was no longer able to go. But very spontaneously I was able to go with an Italian family who was kind of known to us, so there was no risk or anything. And that became a pivotal really year in my life, because French and Italian are incredibly similar. It took me 3 months to work out how to converse effectively, but I fell in love with an Italian boy, my first real love, and I loved all things Italian. And so when I came back to Australia, because I'd deferred university and didn't know what I was going to do, I decided to go on and do what you would call liberal arts, and I ended up doing an honours degree with a double major in Italian language and literature, which is beautiful but entirely useless. Loved it. but useless. And so then I went on to do a postgraduate in business management, majoring in human resources, because I thought I should go into HR. People kept saying, oh, you're really good with people, you should go into HR. So I tried that. I had just come out of, in Australia, the recession, and getting new placements was really, really difficult. So I ended up going into industrial relations, so working, representing the government, working with unions to negotiate agreements and so on. And there were aspects of that I loved, but overwhelmingly, it's a terribly negative, confrontational environment. And I just looked at all of my management and thought, I don't want to end up like any of you. So I decided that was not going to be the career for me. And so from there, I moved through all sorts of different careers. That's where I started out in recruitment. So I spent a few years in recruitment, operations. I was working for a startup, so I was like the only employee of a very small startup. I worked for my husband's business, who was starting up like a fintech company. I had a range of different jobs that I did, and then I eventually went into a professional development company. They were corporate trainers. They had done corporate training for the company that I had been at previously. So I knew them, they knew me, and I loved what they did. And I could see how transformative it was, not only for my life, but watching my peers around me, the impact of this training. So I loved working for them. That was really one of my career highlights. And I ended up becoming the general manager of that business. And that was when I was living in Sydney. And then, of course, we got relocated to the States. So
wow,
4 years in Kansas and then 3 years in Texas. And while I was living in Kansas, I started up my own business. In Kansas, they didn't exist, and you would probably know them now, and certainly in California, they'd be there. They're called muslin wraps. They're baby wrapping pieces of fabric. They're just a way of keeping the baby very snuggled tight when they're newborns. So I had a business called Koala Cuddles, and my husband calls it the MBA that I never did. So I loved that. I really enjoyed it. And then when we moved back to Australia, I decided to close that down for a raft of different reasons. So there you go. That was a long answer, but that gives you a bit of a feel for, where I am.
So when you came to the States, that was because of your husband's work?
Yeah, that's right. So when I first met him, we were living in Perth. And so we actually moved Perth, Sydney, Melbourne, Sydney. So we were back in Sydney again. We did 8 years for that second time, 7 years in the States, and then we moved back in. So by this move here, this house that I'm in now is now our 13th move. So I'm not moving anywhere for a while.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. All right. And so when you came to America, what was your impression of America before you came here?
Look, I think it's very easy to think, oh, well, we all speak English and we're both Western countries, we've got a lot in common. And in absolute fairness, America, like Australia, is a vast country, and every state has its own flavour, its own identity, its own geography. Like, it is an incredibly diverse country. So it's very hard to massively generalise. I think what became really clear to us by the end of our time in particular was that Australians live for the moment. We very much live, we work so that we can live. Like, we work, we go and do our job, we work really hard, but, come Friday night, we always catch up with our mates. There's always a barbecue on the weekend. We make sure we go on holidays once a term. Like, there's a real sense of living. We are very confident that we will work until the day that we have to retire. And so we may as well enjoy right now. Like, we just live for the moment. Whereas in America, my experience of America, there's this hope that everyone will be able to retire at the age of 50. All they have to do is work really, 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 really hard. So let's not spend any money. Let's not go crazy. Let's not go wild. Let's just work really hard for the next 30 years and then we'll be fine. Of course, in reality, very few people actually get the opportunity to retire at 50.
Right.
So there's this sense of having lost the opportunity to do a lot of things and live a lot of life because they've been so busy working and saving up for a future that actually may never come. But as I said, that's my experience, and very determined by where I was living and who I was surrounded by. But that's certainly the impression that we got. There's a love of, we have, particularly Melbourne, we're quite the coffee snobs. We really missed our coffee, particularly when we were living in Kansas. Texas, Austin was great. We had some great coffee shops there. Very friendly, Americans on that level. Americans are very like Australians. Love a chat, love to meet people, always curious. For a long time, people couldn't get past my accent. So every time I was asking for directions, I'd get the, "Oh my God, I've got no idea what you just said. Can you say it again?" Look, it was great. It was a life-changing experience. And we had agreed to a 2-year contract. So when we finally came back at 7 years, I felt like, I'm ready to come home. But there was so much that we didn't get to see. Yeah.
That's true. It's a big country, just like Australia.
Massive. My husband, because he was traveling for work, he saw every state except I think one, but I didn't get to see anywhere near as many as that. But truth have it, we actually have a property in Montana. We go back to Montana every year. Yeah. So we're back there every year. Well, of course, outside of COVID.
Yes.
We're there every year.
Yeah. So you like the great wide open space of Montana.
Yeah. And my kids, because we were living there, my kids learnt to ski. So for them, the opportunity to ski was really, I didn't growing up. It's always much harder to learn when you're older. And so we were really keen to make sure they could do it because it's something that you can travel the world doing. And so, we do. We try and get back there every year.
That's very cool. It's funny. Yeah. I grew up in California, and I guess I like warm weather. And so vacations we would normally take were beach vacations. I don't think we ever hardly took any ski vacations. Our kids didn't learn how to ski until my youngest. He learned how to ski because he had friends. I mean, we're only 2 hours away from.
I know. Tahoe.
Yeah. Well, no, not Tahoe. Big Bear. But it's, I mean, like my kids are like, well, how come we never learned how to ski? Yeah. So they feel a little gypped, but.
Well, they can go and do it themselves.
Yeah. So when you were here and then you're raised in a family, were you working full time as well?
No. So when we arrived in Kansas, my youngest was 18 months. And so we were very much, my husband was off working and traveling most days of the week. So no, my initial role was just to get kind of bedded down and work out the lay of the land and try and make some connections. And then when I wanted to go back to work, I had the rights to work. We had all the right visas, but I really struggled to find an opportunity because I didn't know anyone. Like I was literally starting from scratch, and it all just became too hard. So in the end, I was working 2 part-time retail jobs. Where I made absolutely no money because I spent every single cent. I was working for a Banana Republic and Williams Sonoma, which I just love. I love. We used to do a lot of entertaining, so not much money was saved. But that's when I decided to create the Koala Cuddles business, because I really wanted to do something that was going to give me the intellectual stimulation that I was looking for. So that was fun. That was a real journey, dealing with China and having a Chinese rep who I was working with online and trying to work out each other's language. And it was very funny sometimes really frustrating. And I'd get the samples and burst into tears because they were nothing like what I was looking for. And it was just a journey. It was just a really fascinating journey, and I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah, I really loved it. But by the time we moved back, I just didn't want it. It'd be trying to bring back a product into an environment where they're everywhere. Like it would be very, very difficult to kind of break into that market. And I thought, I'm ready to do something different. So when we came back, and I took a job doing recruitment straight away because I knew I could do it. I shouldn't have taken it really. I really don't enjoy recruitment as an industry. And it's not where I wanted to be long term. And that's what set me on the path of seeing a career coach. And, it was over a journey of about 6 months of working out, who I was, what I wanted to do, what I was good at, having lots and lots of conversations with lots and lots of different people, and then doing a whole lot of different accreditations. And one of them was a coaching accreditation. And that's what led me onto the path. Oh, wow, this is really where I need to be. So I was doing executive and then the life coaching and then the career coaching because, as you said in the introduction, I just kept attracting this woman who was in exactly the same position that I had been. And I thought, there is definitely a path there for women to take. If they want to go back to work, there is a path, and trying to follow those traditional methods of getting back into the market is just never going to work for them. Yeah.
Yeah. And even I feel like it's gotten worse today, the job market, because I feel like you are just a number. As I have a son who graduated college, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago or something like that. And, he would send in his resumes and nobody would ever say they received it, nothing. And then I think he told me that he had sent out like over 400 resumes. He got 2 interviews that were just like phone interviews. I don't even think they looked at him. Like they're just talking to him on the phone. Wow. And then nothing came about that. And so after that, we're like, well, I think you need to expand the area. Like he was just looking, I think, in San Diego where he wanted to work and he wasn't having any luck. So when he expanded to like all of California, like he looked in Northern California, he finally found something. But the fact that you could send out 400 resumes and get absolutely no response, but maybe 2 phone interviews and 1 actual in-person interview is kind of mind-boggling to me. It's quite different than even when I was, going after a job. It wasn't like that. You had more personal response from like HR, like thank you, and you would, send thank yous and they responded. Yeah, now it's so sad. It seems my impression is a lot of the jobs come from networking.
Absolutely. It's the first thing that I tell my clients. First of all, stop working on your resume. Like that is the last thing you need to be working on. There's so much stuff that you need to be thinking about and doing before you even get to send anyone a resume. When you know that 75-80% of all the jobs that are filled, and this is the same for Australia, UK and the US, they're pretty much the same statistics. Those numbers, that represents all the jobs that are filled are via personal and professional contacts and networks. Like as little as 15 to 20% come from a recruitment company or a job board. And for that reason alone, I say to my women, don't try and compete head on with that. Like it's just not worth it. You really need to learn how to have conversations, good conversations. I talk to them about don't feel like you're having to sell yourself, because when you know who you are, when you've done the work on who you are, what's important to you, what you're good at, what you want to do, and then you're just trying to work out where and how you can do that, that's a process of exploration, and that's lots of conversations. So you just need to get comfortable talking to people, and then eventually someone will really say, I like what you've got. I like what you've got to contribute. I really like who you are as a person. I'm sure we can find something because I really need someone with your skill sets here. But that'll never happen if you don't talk to people. So you've got to learn to have these conversations. But the first thing I say is, A, stop writing on your resume, and B, stop applying for stuff online, because it is demoralizing. It becomes really, for women who want to go back where their confidence is already probably not great, that kind of process where you just hit silence all the time is really hard. What am I doing wrong? What do I need to change? You'll have no idea.
Yeah, you're right. It would really affect the self-esteem.
Yeah, that's right. And particularly now when we know that when companies receive a resume, it's often not even read by a human being. It just goes through an IT software platform that is looking very specifically for particular words or education backgrounds or location. They're looking very specifically. And if you don't match it, the resume will never reach a human.
Yeah. Well, that's good information, because a lot of people probably don't know what's happening behind the scenes with hiring from a company, or how they do things. So what other information would you talk about for when people are looking for a job or networking? Like, what type of networking should they be doing?
Yeah, so I often talk about, the fact that women, when they're going back, just break out into a sweat when they feel like they have to sell themselves. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't possibly sell myself. I've got nothing to offer. I've got nothing to contribute. So I said, okay, well, let's just take the pressure off and let's stop in this idea of selling yourself. It's really about, the first thing is for you to understand who you are. And, I often have clients say, look, can we just get past the fluffy stuff and just get on to like the really practical things? I said, sure, look, we can do that. But what will happen is that you will take a job and it won't be in alignment with you. You'll be really unhappy, and then you'll be really resentful that you gave up being at home to go to a job that you really don't like. So you'll resign, and then we'll be back at square one again. So it's up to you. We can do it the long way or the short way, because working out who you are is just absolutely fundamental to going on to find a job that's going to give you the fulfillment and the reward that you really are looking for. Mm-hmm. So spending time up front, what are my values? Working out your values, working out how you're able to live your values. How have you lived your values in the past at work? If you were trying to imagine your future, how would you be living them in the future? So working out the values is really, really important. Working out what's important to you in terms of what will you draw a line in the sand at, what will you tolerate, what will you not tolerate, and understanding why. What's the why that sits behind that. Understanding what drives you and motivates you is really, really incredibly important. And those things can also change. So your values from where you were younger, before you had kids, and where you are now quite possibly have shifted, and that's really normal. And in fact, there's a great book by Dr. Benjamin Hardy called Personality Isn't Permanent. So particularly for my clients who say, well, look, I used to be really like this, but I just don't want to be like that anymore. It's absolutely a path. You don't have to be stuck in who you were in the past. You can absolutely choose your future and how you want to choose to show up in your future. So that's a book that I recommend to lots of people to read. So working out who you are is the first bit. And then it's about really understanding what it is that you bring to the world. And even though, it may have been some years, and some of my clients have been out 12, 15 years, it may feel like you've got nothing to contribute. Actually, all those skills that you learned all of those years ago and you applied all of those years ago, they're still there. They actually still exist. It's just a matter of kind of bringing them up to the surface, if you will, like remembering what you were good at, what you loved doing. And then also understanding why you loved doing those things, why you know that you were good at it. Like, let's get some data, let's get some evidence. Your brain is very quick to what we call confirmation bias. It's very quick to find evidence to prove its point of view. So, if you're constantly saying to yourself, I've got nothing to add, I've got nothing to add, I've got nothing to add, when you can go back to your past and pull out data and have evidence, oh yeah, I was really good at that and I was really good at that. Then when that voice pops up that says you've got nothing to add, so actually I do have something to add because I did this and this and I was able to do that and I got a pay rise for this and I got a bonus for that. And you can actually build up that data in your brain to try and shift the confirmation bias that's going on. So once you've got a really good idea of what all of those skill sets are, then it's about understanding, well, what were the strengths? What are my real strengths? And some of these things can be developed while you're at home. There doesn't have to be stuff that's come from work. Maybe you spend a lot of time volunteering. Maybe you spend a lot of time on the school P&F. Maybe you're at the local sports club and you're the team manager. There are lots of different avenues that you can develop a range of different skill sets and experiences. And it's looking back at all of these things and working out, okay, so which of these things are what we would call transferable skills? What can I bring forward to move into the future? And then we go on a journey of, what do we want to do and how might we be doing these things? How might I be able to use this particular skill set that I really want to get back to using again?
I 100% agree with you. I was a stay-at-home mom and, for a while, and there's a lot of skills that you do as a mom I feel that we don't take into account, like what you were saying, like you say you're the team manager, or you're volunteering, which is, these are all things that I did. And sometimes moms don't even think about that. They're just going back to when they were in the actual workforce.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are really good points. And
Yeah.
then when it comes to networking, what types of networking do you recommend? I know before the pandemic and then like during the pandemic, what kind of networking options?
Yeah. So we talk about two different types of interviews. You have job interviews where you're really, there's a specific job that you're looking for. And then we have informational interviews. And informational interviews are literally what they sound like. It's about you collecting information. Yes, you're giving information, but what I get my clients to do is, starting from their immediate contacts around them, is not start every conversation with, I'm looking for a job, can you help me? But start it with, I'm thinking about going back to work. I think I want to go into accounting. I've always loved numbers and I'm really interested in this. Do you know anyone that's an accountant? Because I'd love to talk to them about actually what you need to do or be to be a really good accountant. And you'll be amazed at the number. People say, oh, yeah, my brother's an accountant. Why don't you have a chat to him? Go and have a chat to the brother. Hi, brother. I'm thinking about going into accounting. What do you think of it as a career? What do you love about it? What don't you love about it? What do you really need to be successful as an accountant? You are gathering information. And as long as the person you're talking to doesn't feel like they have to give you a job at the end of the conversation or do something for you, people are so happy to talk about themselves. They're happy to talk about their experiences. They want to talk about themselves. So use it. Just get them to download. And in that process, you are learning about that particular role. Now, don't take it from just one person. Make sure you have conversations with 3 or 4 or 5 different accountants and get lots of broad perspectives. But you are building up a knowledge base that is going to help inform you about this next choice. And you may be really committed and think, yeah, actually, this is a career I want to pursue. What are the skill sets that I need to do? I've spoken to all of these different people. So then you go on the path of perhaps doing some retraining or upskilling if that's what you need to do. But you might also go through the process and think, oh gosh, I don't want to do that at all. Like I had a client who was really committed to health, and she was taking a complete career direction change, and she thought that she wanted to start up a health bar company. She's really passionate about health and fitness and looking after yourself. And she said, yeah, I've thought it for about 6 months, and, I'm really keen, and I've thought about the colours and the branding and the marketing, and that's great. And she's got contacts in advertising. And I said, okay, so I think step 1, let's just go out and talk to all the people that you know that you can get in front of and ask them what their experiences are of running a food business in the health fitness space. Right, okay, so that was a bit of an exercise working out who she could talk to, but, she found 3 or 4 different people. And she came back 6 weeks later and she said, I'm not going near that. I don't want anything to do with that. That is not what I thought it was going to be. But it was until she did the work, it was until she had all of those conversations, what we call those informational interviews, she couldn't possibly have known. So even though it was 6 weeks of conversations, that originally she felt like, oh my gosh, this was such a waste of my time. It's like, well, actually, it was so valuable, because if you just dived on in and plowed your way into this career path and 18 months later thought, oh my gosh, this has been such a terrible waste of my time, that's a longer period of time. Mm-hmm. Now, I would still argue it's not a waste of time, because every step is part of the journey, and that's okay. But yeah, as I was saying, it's really about having those conversations. So learning to have information gathering conversations with absolutely every single person around you will go a really long way. And if you're not asking people for things except for their experience and their knowledge and their advice, they will happily give it.
And I'm sure that does lead to some job opportunities too.
Oh, absolutely. Because as you're going through that process, every conversation that you have, it's strategic, you're doing it smartly, but every conversation you have, you follow up with a thank you note or an email or a small gift or a $5 coffee voucher or whatever it might be, and you are building a network. So when 3-6 months later, you've had all of these conversations and you've got a very clear idea of where you want to go. Then you go back to every single one of those people, say, thank you so much for your time. It was absolutely invaluable. What I've worked out in this journey is that actually what I want to do is X, and this is really the career path. Who do you reckon I should speak to? Again, you're not asking them for a job, you're just asking for their contact. So the contacts, it's like a funnel, is getting narrower and narrower and narrower in terms of what you want to do. So ultimately, you're having conversation after conversation with the right people in the right industries, in the right environments that you need to be talking to. And you've got there very smoothly and very comfortably. So it's not a really awkward kind of conversation. And then you can say, you know, this is the career that I want to do, and I know I want to go that way. Who do you think I should speak to? And it's in those experiences that someone will say, hey, you know what, Mary over at XYZ company, she's been looking for a marketing assistant for about 3 months. Why don't you go and have a chat to her? It's, as I said, 75 to 80% of all jobs are going to be through personal and professional networks and contacts. And that's it. That's how it happens.
Yeah. It's amazing. I didn't know it was so high. What do you recommend about doing, like, I don't know how easy this is, but to do shadowing, maybe shadow somebody's job, or doing internships?
Oh, gosh, if you can, if there's an opportunity to do it, that hands-on experience is always incredibly well received by a potential employer, because it gives them confidence that you have actually a bit more insight into the job. It's not a hypothetical what you think you're going to be doing. If you've had some kind of experience, absolutely. You know, if you can get even an unpaid internship for, 6 weeks or something, the hands-on experience will always be incredibly well received. So if it's possible, definitely. Mm-hmm. And I know in the age of COVID, it's incredibly difficult even to get interviews with people. But what I would say is Zoom facilitates a 15-minute conversation with people very easily. No one's traveling, so it's really easy to get people's time because a lot of them are around. Yes, don't use COVID as an excuse not to get out there and chat to people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then, other than reaching out to people you know, how would people seek out networking?
Yeah, so definitely start with people that you know, and what we're doing is going to our friends and family, again, not asking them for anything, and there's no expectation, but if they know someone in this industry that you think you want to work in, do you reckon I could have a chat with them? Most people are really happy to facilitate that. It's not, hey, look, I really need a job in marketing. Can you get me in front of someone who could get me a job? That's an entirely different approach and conversation. And if you're going into that conversation expecting a job, you're probably going into it with a wrong intention. It really is about information gathering and just expanding your network. So you will be amazed if you actually sit down and go through a plan of every single person that you know and how you know them. It's vast, and that's where to start, because even if you go on LinkedIn and you find someone that actually, you're kind of down the path a bit and you think, yeah, actually that's a person that I really do need to have a conversation with, find the contacts, find the connections between you and them, do some work, talk to lots of people to try and work out one person between you and them, and ask that person, look, I really would love to speak to Frank. I'm not sure that I want a job yet, but I would love to get a 15-minute with him because I think so, but I just want to make sure that it's the right career path and I think he could add lots of value to my research. That's the pathway moving forward. But start with your closer contacts, because someone gave me a saying that I've held on to and I use with all of my clients all the time. Because we get nervous about asking for people for things because we don't want to be judged, what will they think of me if I'm asking for this, and maybe they don't want to help me, and you can wrap yourself up in knots, or as my American girlfriend would say, you can tie yourself up like a pretzel. So what I really get them to see is that you can't say the wrong thing to the right person, and you can't say the right thing to the wrong person. And basically what that's about is the people around you in your life that love you and want to support you and help you. It doesn't matter what you say or how you say it, they'll find a way of being able to help you. The people who don't want to help you, that don't want to be a part of that, doesn't matter what you say to them. It's never going to be the right thing. So don't worry about it. Just let it go. If they don't help, they don't help. Just move on to the next person who will help. There will always be people around you who will help facilitate, particularly if they feel like they're not being cornered or there's some pressure on them to perform or do something or provide something. But if you're asking them for their advice, they'll help.
Yeah. So don't go in with any expectations and not.
Yeah, other than information. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Mm.
Okay. And at what point, so you said the last kind of resource is your resume, but at what point do you address the resume?
Yeah, well, often in those conversations right down the back end of the process, it's once you've built the rapport. It's when you've had a couple of conversations with them when they think, yeah, look, actually, I think she'd be great for this business and you should probably go and chat to HR. Can you put together your resume for me and just, get across to Joanna, and it's important that she has a look at it. That's when you do your resume, because then you can frame it in such a way that the culture of the place, the skill sets that they're looking for, what's going to be valuable to them in terms of the environment. So that's how you structure your resume. You've got all of that information clearly laid out so that when Joanna in HR she goes, oh, yeah, all right, she's got that. That's great. Yeah, excellent, Bob. Yep, go ahead. If you want to get us started next week, that'd be awesome. It's the last thing that an employer will look at. If you've had those conversations and you've built that rapport and they know that much about you and they're keen to give you a job, the resume is the last tick in the box.
Very good. And then I'm wondering, how do you guys address like salary? So when you are down to the point of getting a job, because here in America, they have something that just came into be. I don't know if it's just our state, California, or if it's in all of the states, but they used to be able to ask you, what were you earning? And now they're not allowed to ask you, which I think is fantastic, because a lot of times have been underpaid.
Me too. If structurally we're going to change the gender pay gap, then I know all about it, because I actually gave a speech just recently and I was talking about the American situation, because we haven't got that yet in Australia, and I'm a full proponent for it. There are a few different states in America now where that applies. Gosh, it's so great. So that means that you need to do your own research about, what you can expect is a reasonable, salary for that role. It's really different. The American and Australian industrial system is quite different as well. But it's also about you having a clear understanding of what it is that you need to go back to work. And when I say need, that's a combination of, okay, how much do I actually need, to pay childcare or food or bills or whatever it might be. But how much do I need emotionally to feel like I'm being valued and it's representing my worth? So that's a bit of research that you need to do. But I'm not a big proponent of, you should take a 30% cut if you want to go back to work. No, I don't think so. I think you go in at what is, in your mind, a reasonable amount based on the research that you've done and what it is that you need. But you have a fair sense of, when you turn up to work, man, I'm not being paid enough. Like, for the hours that I'm working and for the level of work that I'm doing, I'm really starting to get resentful about how little I'm being paid, versus I feel really good. I'm getting my value. I can contribute freely. I'm happy to go above and beyond because I know I'm being well recompensed. I think that's a really important position for each person to meet on their own. They have to work out what that level is. But there shouldn't be any surprises either way. So by the time you get to a conversation around a job offer, that should be well and truly already out there and discussed, so there are no surprises.
Mm-hmm. And working with a career coach, I would guess that they help you with all of the things you're talking about, and you probably have a good understanding for the industries that you're working with, like what salaries are, and you can help people with that.
Yeah, and I get my clients to really do that research so that they feel really comfortable with what they're asking for and what they want, because every industry is different.
Mm-hmm. What is a typical work week for you?
For me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty much in my office most mornings by about 8:15. I spend a bit of time doing social media work, doing work on Facebook and interacting with the group. I have a private Facebook group for a couple of hundred women, answering questions and giving up daily, inspiration and tips and tools and strategies for them to be thinking about. I have a dog, so there's always a dog walk in there at some point. I try and get to the gym at least once a day. That's a really important outlet for me. I'm reading, so there's always a book on the go, whether it be for work or for, book club, or what we actually call wine club. What else is every day? A lot of time on marketing. Learning to be a digital marketer is challenging. It's because it's not my background or my skill set. So doing a few different courses on digital marketing work, and then obviously just working with my clients. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So you work one-on-one as well as sometimes you do group ones. And is it via Zoom or Skype?
Yes, right. Yeah. Zoom is my platform. So for those who are doing the course or still in the course, we do weekly group coaching. And there are only fairly small groups, group coaching. And then outside of that, there's also one-on-one coaching. So it's a combination of, where they're at in the course and in their own journey. Yeah, it's a combination. But yeah, it is all via Zoom. No face-to-face meetings anymore.
Mm-hmm. And so do you work mainly with people in Australia or from all over the world?
Yeah, actually all over the world. I would say my biggest group is still Australia, but then it's followed by the US and then the UK. Yeah.
Very good.
Because it's all online, it's very easy. I just have to try and, get the time frames right in terms of being able to do the group coaching.
Mm-hmm. And then tell us about your classes. How are they? What are they about?
Yeah. So the online course is a 6-module program, and I take the women through a journey starting with who am I? That's the first module that we do. And we do quite a lot of work on values and so on. And then we look at where am I going? And we look at things like obstacles, what's getting in the way. And then we look at where am I going? What's in my way? Who do I need to be? So how do I need to show up in the world? How do I need to be to get where it is that I want to go? Actions I can take. What are the things that I can actually do to move myself forward? So very practical, pragmatic stuff. We talk about, the informational interviews, job interviews, the different types of interview styles. We look at your resume. We look at the really practical things that can be done. And then the last module is called Stepping into My Future. And it's a lot of mindset work around, creating the vision for yourself and for your future and what that looks like and how to live out that future that you want. So lots of work around visualizations, affirmations, mantras, those sorts of things that serve us well, because what we know is that our thoughts precede our feelings. So when we know that we can take responsibility for our feelings by the way we're thinking, let's learn to think helpfully. Let's learn to find ways of thinking that actually move us forward. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a 6-module program. And clients have lifetime access to that, so they can go back to it whenever they need to. They can dip in and out, and then it's a 6-week coaching program that sits around that. And then, of course, they can do ongoing coaching as they need to, as they want to.
Sounds very good. How long have you been doing the program?
I launched last July. And I wrote the program the previous January, February, March. So it was all the writing and the filming and doing all the worksheets and so on. And then the 18 months before that, I was doing a personal development, like a life coaching program that someone else had written. And then before that, I was doing the executive coaching. So I guess I've been coaching now for 4, maybe 5 years, because I was doing executive coaching for a couple of years. So that's where we're at. Mm.
Yeah, that's wonderful. What inspires you with the work that you do?
Oh, that's easy. What is such a privilege to be a part of is watching women's transformation, because a lot of women come into the program thinking that they're going to get a job, even though I tell them, okay, this is not about me giving you a job. I can't guarantee that I'm going to give you a job. What I can guarantee is that you'll know what to do to get a job. Once they start to go through the program and they see that it's much more than practical things about how to write a resume or how to have an interview, when they understand that the skill sets that I'm giving and the knowledge that I'm giving them around understanding psychologically, what is change? Why does the brain react the way it does to change? Why are we so fear-based? What are we so fearful of? And how does fear show up in our lives? And when they start to see how much they are holding themselves back and they're allowing themselves to be held back, then they start to actually change their life. And when they start to see that they actually hold their destiny in their hands, and when they start to be more empowered to step into that, that is my inspiration. And when I get the emails that are just like, you can see how much it's changing their lives, and they'll move on from me and they'll go on to work, but it's so much more than just their work. It's how they view themselves. It's how they view their relationships, how they view how they show up in the world, how they choose to live the rest of their life. You know, when they understand that they can choose to live their life by design and not by default, that is the greatest privilege. I just, don't tell anyone, but I do it for free because it's just, it's just an amazing thing to witness.
That's beautiful. And that probably extrapolates out to everybody that they're working with or the way they're raising their children. And so you haven't just touched them.
Yeah, that's it. It's absolutely transformative. Yeah, for so much of their lives.
That's beautiful. What life advice do you have for people?
Don't wait. Don't wait for the right time, because there's never the right time. The right time is right now, or probably yesterday. So don't wait. Don't live life worried about other people's perceptions or views or opinions. It's not relevant. It's not relevant. This is your life. You need to take responsibility for it and choose to live it the way that you want to live it. So let that go. And that's a big part of, obviously what I work with my women. Don't wait. Don't worry about other people's opinions, and take the time to work out who you are, because while some people will go through their whole life and never really take the time to be introspective, it's actually incredibly empowering when you start to work out who you are. So take the time, start reading books, start reading blogs, and it only needs to be a little bit at the beginning, because once you start, you'll see that there's so much more that you want to read, so you'll go on and do a whole lot more. But take the time to know who you are. Yeah.
And I'm taking it that when you're learning who you are, you're kind of revisiting the things that you're passionate about. That's really what you're learning.
Yeah, not only what you're passionate about, but you're also learning, what your own values are, but you're also learning what your beliefs are, what your self-beliefs are. And very few people give the time to really look at themselves and pull apart the way they think and why they think the way they think. Because once you understand why you think that way, you might think, well, actually, I'm not sure that I believe that to be true anymore. Like maybe I believed that for a while, but I don't know that I do. That's really empowering as well. These beliefs and these self-beliefs are like the foundation of a home. You can't see them, like they're not written on people's faces, but they are absolutely fundamental to the way you live your life. The choices that you make, the relationships that you form, the way you raise your family, they are absolutely fundamental. So getting to know what those foundations look like and making sure they're the right foundations is really, really super important for you to live the life that you want to live. So yes, I think that's a really big part of the introspective work as well. Working out who you are, what drives you. Often we don't realise that we're living out other people's self-beliefs and other people's beliefs, like our parents. You know, we don't realize it, but we tend to pick up a lot from them, and we repeat a lot of patterns. And it's not until we stop when we think, hang on, I've managed to have the same sort of relationship with the last 3 boyfriends, and I don't even like that particular person, but I keep attracting that person. Why am I attracting that person? You know, those sorts of patterns we live over and over again. Relationships with siblings. You know, we always have a fight about this. Why do we always fight about this? What's going on here that this is always a sticking point for us? Working out these patterns in our life is really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I would recommend that Americans are great at it anyway. It's, you know, that whole idea of everyone should go and see a therapist. I think everyone should go and see a therapist because a qualified, psychologist will really just get you thinking about yourself and getting to know you. So, yeah, I recommend everyone do it. Yeah.
And then, well, what about just a life coach? Like, do you think that's just as beneficial?
Well, look, it depends on your mental health and issues that are presenting in your life. I would always go for a qualified psychologist if there are, mental health issues that need to be dealt with. If there's just curiosity and you're looking for guidance and you're feeling stuck and you're not quite sure what to do to move forward, absolutely, a life coach can be completely transformative. And a good life coach will recognise where there are actually mental health issues going on, and they will recommend that you go and see, a psychologist. It's when there's enough going on in your life that there's too much negativity. There are patterns that are so profoundly unhelpful and causing you to not live life well. Then I would go and see a psychologist. But yeah, a life coach can be terrific. Absolutely.
Good advice. I like to ask people, what do you feel humanity needs to work on to make our world a better place?
Empathy. I think when we start to view other people's lives and imagine living life in their shoes, regardless, every person that we come across, if we just took a moment to be empathetic and non-judgmental, it would give us an opportunity to really be more compassionate and understanding and find a bridge rather than create a war. And that goes right down to our neighbours, our relationship with the people around us. Rather than being judgmental, be curious. I wonder why they made that decision, and why does that decision impact me the way it does, and what does that say about me? And just taking a moment to be less judgmental and more empathetic, I think would be profoundly helpful.
Beautiful. Do you have some books or maybe websites that you recommend?
Oh, I love a book by Mark, I think it's Ransom, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an Expletive that begins with F. The title is incredibly confrontational and obviously sounds very flippant, but for anyone who wants to start to get to know themselves a bit better, it's a fabulous read. In fact, I did read that on a flight from Australia to LA one time. So you can work through that book really quite quickly, but it is really terrific. It really helps you understand why knowing yourself is so important, because you'll stop wasting time with things that are not important to you. You'll work out that you've got one life, so let's make it the life that you want it to be. So let's work out, what does that look like? So that's a terrific book. I really enjoyed that one. Dr. Benjamin Hardy's Personality Isn't Permanent is another really terrific book. There's a book by an Australian journalist and author, Julia Baird, called Phosphorescence, which is all about kind of like the meaning of life, really. I really enjoyed that read as well. That was a terrific read. Of course, anything by Brene Brown or Simon Sinek are good too. They're a little bit denser, but they're a couple of my favourites, yeah.
And then with the work that you've created, do you see yourself making that into a book?
It's so funny that you should say that, because just this week someone said to me, You should write a book. So I'll never say never. It wasn't on my horizon, but it may well be. You never know. Mm.
Yeah, you sound like you have a lot of knowledge and a lot of expertise and insight. So I can see that people would love working with you.
No, that's lovely. Thanks, Lainey.
You're welcome. How do people get in touch with you?
So, well, email is diana@backtoworkroadmap.com. That's Diana with one N. I'm on Instagram, backtowork.coach. I have a public Facebook group, the Back to Work Roadmap for Mothers, and then a private one. So you can always request to be a part of that. And then my website, which is www.backtoworkroadmap.com.
Very good. Thank you for taking the time to.
Oh, not at all, Lainey. It's been such a pleasure. It's been lovely chatting with you.
Oh, very good. Thank you so much.